I'm a 58-year-old father of two children, my son Jake, the 32, and daughter Eleanor, 28. They used to be close growing up, but had a major falling out about 6 years ago. My wife Sarah and I never found out exactly what happened, but it was bad enough that they completely stopped speaking to each other. Jake and Eleanor were always different, even as kids. Jake was outgoing and athletic, captain of the soccer team in high school. Eleanor was more introverted and artistic, spending hours in her room painting or writing poetry. Despite their differences, they got along well for most of their childhood. They'd defend each other against bullies and spend summer evenings catching fireflies together in our backyard. Things started to change when Jake left for college. Eleanor was 14 at the time and took it hard. She became more withdrawn and moody. We chalked it up to typical teenage angst, but looking back, I wonder if we should have done more to help her through that transition. In college, Jake thrived. He made the dean's list every semester and was president of the business club. Eleanor struggled more when she started college a few years later. She changed majors 3 times and had trouble making friends. We later found out she was dealing with undiagnosed anxiety and depression. Despite their diverging paths, Jake and Eleanor still seemed close when they were both home for holidays. They'd stay up late talking and laughing about inside jokes from their childhood. That's why it was such a shock when they suddenly stopped speaking to each other 6 years ago. It happened over Thanksgiving break. Jake and Eleanor had gone out to a bar with some of their old high school friends. They came home separately, hours apart. Jake looked upset, but wouldn't talk about it. Eleanor locked herself in her room and cried for hours. The next morning, they both left early without saying goodbye to anyone. For weeks after, Sarah and I tried to find out what happened. We called, texted, and even showed up at their apartments unannounced. But they both refused to talk about it. Eventually, we gave up and just accepted that they weren't on speaking terms anymore. At family events, they'd completely ignore each other. It was awkward, but we learned to live with it. Sarah and I would run interference, making sure they were never seated at the same table or left alone in a room together. It broke our hearts to see our once close children so estranged, but we felt powerless to fix it. About 3 years ago, Jake met his now wife Emma. They were introduced by mutual friends at a charity gala. Jake called us the next day, excited in a way we hadn't heard in years. He said Emma was brilliant and beautiful, a pediatric surgeon with a passion for volunteering. They hit it off immediately and got engaged last year. Sarah and I really like Emma. She's smart, kind, and seems perfect for Jake. We were thrilled when they announced their engagement. Emma made an effort to get to know us, coming over for Sunday dinners and remembering little details about our lives. She even helped Sarah plant a new flower garden in our backyard. Eleanor has been living abroad for work for the past few years. After college, she got a job with an international nonprofit, doing environmental conservation work in Southeast Asia. We told her about Jake's engagement, but she didn't seem to care much. She said she probably wouldn't be able to make it to the wedding due to work commitments. We were disappointed but not surprised by Eleanor's response. She'd become more and more distant over the years, only calling on holidays and major occasions. We'd tried to visit her a couple times, but she always had an excuse for why it wasn't a good time. Everything was going smoothly with the wedding planning until about a month ago. Jake and Emma had chosen a beautiful vineyard venue, and Sarah was helping with the flower arrangements. We were all excited and busy with preparations. Then, out of the blue, I got a hysterical phone call from Eleanor. It was the middle of the night for her, and at first, I thought something terrible had happened. She was furious and crying, accusing me of playing favorites with Jake. When she calmed down a bit, she dropped a bombshell. She and Emma had dated briefly in college. Apparently, Emma and Eleanor had an intense relationship during Emma's freshman year. Eleanor was a junior at the time. Emma had broken things off suddenly, leaving Eleanor heartbroken. Now, Eleanor was convinced that Emma was only marrying Jake to get back at her. I was shocked and didn't know what to think. This revelation put everything in a new light. Jake and Eleanor's falling out. Emma's occasional discomfort when we brought up Eleanor. Eleanor's reluctance to come home. It felt like the missing piece of a puzzle we'd been trying to solve for years. Eleanor demanded that I stop the wedding and disown Jake unless he broke up with Emma. She said if I didn't, she'd take matters into her own hands. Her tone was scary. I'd never heard her sound so unhinged before. I told her she was being ridiculous and hung up. Over the next couple weeks, Eleanor kept texting me threats about ruining the wedding. She said she'd expose Emma as a lying cheater and make sure Jake knew the truth about his fiancée. I didn't tell anyone about this, not even Sarah. I figured Eleanor was just upset and venting, and that she wouldn't actually do anything since she was in another country. I did try to reason with Eleanor via text. I reminded her of how close she and Jake used to be, and how happy Emma made him. I suggested that maybe there had been a misunderstanding, and offered to mediate a conversation between her and Emma. But Eleanor wasn't interested in talking it out. She just kept making threats. Finally, I warned her that if she tried anything, I'd cut her off completely, financially and emotionally. This seemed to quiet her down for a few days, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I convinced myself that the crisis had been averted. The day before the wedding, Sarah and I arrived at the venue early to help set up. The vineyard looked beautiful, with fairy lights strung between the trees and flowers everywhere. But when we walked into the reception hall, my heart stopped. Someone had spray-painted "Home Wrecker" in huge red letters on the wall behind where Jake and Emma were supposed to say their vows. I knew immediately it was Eleanor's doing. In a panic, I quickly arranged to have the graffiti covered up before anyone else saw it. I told the venue staff it was a prank by some local kids and paid them extra to keep quiet about it. I didn't tell Sarah or anyone else what had happened. The ceremony went off without a hitch and no one was the wiser. Jake and Emma looked so happy as they said their vows. Sarah cried tears of joy. I felt guilty keeping this secret, but I told myself it was for the best. Why ruin their special day? It wasn't until after the reception that Jake and Emma asked about the strange backdrop we'd used for the ceremony. They'd noticed it looked hastily put together and didn't match the rest of the decor. I knew I couldn't keep lying, so I finally came clean and told them everything. Eleanor's phone call, the threats, and the graffiti. Jake and Emma were upset, but thanked me for protecting them from the drama on their wedding day. Jake said he'd had no idea about Eleanor and Emma's past relationship. Emma was quiet, looking guilty and scared. Sarah, on the other hand, was furious with me. She said I should have told everyone as soon as Eleanor started making threats. She accused me of having a savior complex and always trying to fix things myself instead of being upfront. She brought up other instances from our past where I'd tried to handle problems on my own without involving her. We got into a big fight about it. Sarah thinks I put Jake and Emma in danger by not warning them. She said Eleanor could have done something much worse than graffiti and we would have been unprepared. I maintain that I was just trying to protect them and ensure their wedding wasn't ruined. It's been days and Sarah is still angry with me. She's sleeping in the guest room and barely speaking to me. Jake and Emma left for their honeymoon, and I'm worried about what they'll come home to. I feel like I've ruined everything by trying to keep the peace. I truly thought I was doing the right thing, but now I'm second-guessing myself. Did I handle this all wrong? Should I have been more upfront from the beginning? I'm lost and don't know how to fix this mess I've created. So Reddit, Aita for not telling my son about his sister's threats before the wedding. Update. It's been about 2 weeks since my original post, and a lot has happened. First, I want to thank everyone for their feedback. Reading through the comments made me realize I needed to have an honest conversation with Sarah about everything. When I finally worked up the courage to talk to Sarah, she revealed that her anger wasn't just about this specific incident. Apparently, I have a long-standing pattern of trying to fix things on my own without communicating. She brought up several examples from over the years that I hadn't even realized were issues. One instance she mentioned was from when Jake was in high school. He was struggling with calculus, and his grades were slipping. Instead of discussing it with Sarah or Jake's teachers, I spent weeks secretly tutoring him after school. I thought I was helping, but Sarah felt left out of an important parenting decision. Another example was when Eleanor was having trouble making friends in middle school. I arranged playdates and sleepovers without telling Eleanor, thinking I was solving the problem. But it just made Eleanor feel even more socially awkward and pressured. The most significant example was when Jake and Eleanor first had their falling out 6 years ago. I tried to trick them into reconciling by inviting them both to dinner without telling them the other would be there. It backfired horribly. Eleanor left in tears, and Jake didn't speak to me for weeks. Sarah was furious with me then too, but I didn't see it as part of a larger problem. Hearing all this made me realize that Sarah was right. I do have a tendency to try to handle everything myself. I've always seen it as my job to protect my family and solve problems. But I now understand how my actions have often made things worse. I apologized to Sarah and promised to work on being more communicative going forward. After clearing the air with Sarah, we decided to reach out to Jake and Emma. They had just returned from their honeymoon, and we invited them over for dinner to discuss everything that happened. When they arrived, I started by apologizing for not telling them about Eleanor's threats sooner. Jake was understanding but admitted he wished he'd known what was going on. Emma was quieter and seemed more shaken by the whole thing. We asked them to tell us the full story of what happened between Emma and Eleanor in college. Emma explained that she and Eleanor had met at a LGBTQ+ student group meeting during Emma's freshman year. Eleanor was a junior and took Emma under her wing, helping her navigate coming out and college life. Their friendship turned romantic after a few months. Emma said it was intense and all-consuming, her first real relationship. But as the school year went on, Emma started to feel overwhelmed. She was struggling with her classes and feeling unsure about her major. Eleanor wanted to spend all their time together, and Emma felt guilty for wanting space. Eventually, Emma ended things abruptly, telling Eleanor she needed to focus on school. She now realizes how hurtful that must have been for Eleanor, but at the time, she was just trying to stay afloat. Emma lost touch with Eleanor after that. She changed her major from pre-med to business, which is how she eventually met Jake years later at a networking event. She had no idea Eleanor was Jake's sister until they'd already been dating for months. Jake said he knew Emma had dated women before him, but she never mentioned names. He had no clue about the connection to Eleanor. When he finally figured it out, he advised Emma not to reach out to Eleanor, given how volatile their relationship had become. Learning all this made Sarah and I realize how little we really knew about our children's lives. We felt like failures as parents for being so out of touch. How had we missed so much? Jake and Emma told us they're planning to file for a restraining order against Eleanor. Apparently, she's been sending harassing emails and messages on social media, not just to them, but to their friends and co-workers as well. They're worried about what she might do next. Sarah and I are heartbroken that it's come to this, but we understand their decision. We told them we'll support whatever they need to do to feel safe. Part of me still wants to try to reason with Eleanor, to find a way to bring our family back together. But I'm learning to accept that I can't control or fix everything. As for Eleanor, we've decided we need to cut contact with her for now. Her behavior has become too erratic and destructive. We're looking into options for getting her professional help, but we can't force her to accept it. It's painful to feel so helpless when it comes to our own daughter. This whole situation has been eye-opening and painful. Sarah and I are in counseling to work on our communication issues. We're also trying to rebuild trust with Jake and Emma. It's a slow process, but I'm committed to doing better for my family. I know now that I should have handled things very differently from the start. I'm working on breaking my habit of trying to fix everything myself. It's not easy to change patterns that have been in place for decades, but I'm trying. I just hope it's not too late to repair the damage I've done. Update 2. It's been about a month since my last update. Things have calmed down somewhat, but we're still dealing with the fallout from everything that's happened. Jake and Emma did end up filing for a restraining order against Eleanor. The hearing was last week, and it was granted. Eleanor didn't show up to contest it, which honestly was probably for the best. The judge reviewed the evidence of her harassment, the threatening messages, the wedding vandalism, and some disturbing posts she'd made online about Emma, and quickly ruled in Jake and Emma's favor. We haven't heard directly from Eleanor since before the wedding. However, we found out through mutual acquaintances that she's been telling people a very warped version of events. She's claiming that Emma stole Jake from her, and that we've all conspired against her. Some distant relatives have been calling us, confused and concerned about what's really going on. It's painful to hear how delusional Eleanor has become. Sarah and I have been struggling with guilt, wondering where we went wrong as parents. We've started seeing a family therapist to work through some of these feelings. The therapist has been helping us understand that while we may have made mistakes, Eleanor's actions are her own responsibility. One thing that's come up in therapy is how differently we treated Jake and Eleanor growing up. We always thought we were being fair, but looking back, we can see how we may have favored Jake unintentionally. He was easier to parent, outgoing, athletic, academically successful. Eleanor required more attention and patience, which we didn't always give her. We've also been discussing our family history of mental health issues. My mother struggled with what we now know was likely bipolar disorder, though it was never formally diagnosed. Sarah's brother has battled addiction for years. We're starting to see how these patterns may have influenced our parenting and our children's development. Jake and Emma seem to be doing well, all things considered. They just got back from their honeymoon and are settling into married life. They've been very understanding about the whole situation with Eleanor, which we're grateful for. Emma especially has shown a lot of compassion. given how Eleanor has targeted her. Last weekend, Jake and Emma came over for dinner. It was the first time we'd all been together since the wedding drama unfolded. There was some initial awkwardness, but as the evening went on, we found ourselves laughing and talking like we used to. It gave me hope that maybe, in time, we can heal as a family. Sarah and I are still working on our communication issues. It's been challenging at times, but I think we're making progress. We've had some difficult, but necessary conversations about our parenting over the years. Sarah has been patient with me as I try to break my habit of trying to handle everything on my own. I'm learning to listen more and act less impulsively. One positive outcome is that this situation has brought Jake and us closer. He's been more open with us lately than he has in years. Last week he called just to chat, something he hasn't done since college. We're trying to rebuild the trust and closeness we used to have. As for Eleanor, we're at a loss. We've tried reaching out through intermediaries to offer help, but she's rejected all contact. Her old roommate told us that Eleanor lost her job recently and has been acting erratically. We're worried about her, but we don't know how to help someone who doesn't want to be helped. We did send Eleanor a letter, telling her that we love her and that we're here if she ever wants to talk. We also urged her to seek professional help. We haven't heard back, but we hope that someday she'll be ready to reconnect. For now, we're focused on healing as a family and moving forward. It's not easy, and there are still tough days. But we're committed to learning from this experience and being better going forward.